Welcome, FPL Surgery listeners and watchers. My name's Rich, and this is episode 221 of the FPL Surgery podcast and YouTube. And as always, I'm here with Dave. How are you, Dave? Good weekend?
It was a great weekend. Now, obviously, I'm not allowed to call you Rich today, so you're going to be referred to as Richard from now on. So yes, Richard, it was a very lovely weekend. I had a great weekend. Good to have the football back.
It sounds so patronising when you call me Richard. Like it sounds like I'm being told off.
It's supposed to. Yeah. Continue.
God, do you want to get on with the headlines?
Yeah.
Do you want to explain what headlines we've got today on this glorious Gameweek 2 preview?
Yeah, of course, Richard. No worries. So the headlines for today: potential Gundawan replacements. Which premiums do we want or need? And finally, Rich's metric team. But who is Rich, you might ask? Well, Richard, what kind of guest have we got today?
This is very confusing. So this week's guest, as you may have already guessed, his name is Rich FPL. He is known for writing for The Hub. He's had a 2K finish as well, and obviously has an incredible first name. So welcome, Rich. How's it going?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on, boys. It's an absolute pleasure. One of the first pods I started listening to when I got into FPL and FPL Twitter, back when Iceman and Stefan were in charge, and I've got around to being on and I'm with you boys. So yeah, not bad at all. Not bad at all.
We're glad to have you on. I mean, I couldn't make you be Richard though, even though I wanted to.
Yeah, I feel under pressure from the get go. So I'm glad that you've drawn the short straw on that one.
Thank you, everyone I'm sorry.
You were going to start plugging stuff.
I was just going to say thanks for watching.
I've got a question from Heisenberg.
Oh, yeah, okay, go for it.
Yeah, he's basically said to ask Rich if he's got the grass stains out of his trousers.
No, I haven't. Me and Heisenberg, Wes, I've got to know him the last sort of year or so since I've been with Hub, and he's a cracking lad, and we're both massive fans of The Office. So when you sent the question to me out yesterday, and I saw that, I knew that I was in for some stick. But yeah, all good.
So this wasn't something that happened at like a Hub meal or anything like that.
No, I brought a spare pair of trousers for that, and Wes left pretty sharpish from the one in July. So I'll leave that to you guys.
I love the idea of someone bringing extra trousers to, oh no, these are just my extra trousers. Everyone just being like, well, we can't say anything, but we really want to ask why. Thank you everyone who's joined us on the live stream. It's awesome to have you here. If you haven't already, it'd be awesome if you subscribe. We're aiming for 1 million, so we're nearly there. We just need a couple more, so that'd be great if you could subscribe if you haven't already. All right, Rich.
Yeah, I wonder if we can hit that goal by Gameweek 2. We'll see, by the Gameweek 2 deadline.
That'd be class.
Yeah. So we just wanted to start. I mean, obviously, it was an amazing game week. So we just wanted to start with some stats from Fantasy Football Hub. Of course, if you want to sign up to Fantasy Football Hub, the link is in the description, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast as well. We've just basically brought up some stats. I've seen Alan's in the chat as well. So obviously, we haven't got Alan this year because it's just more difficult to do. Doing videos as well. But thanks for your work last year, Alan. And we've got basically this table. Antonio's top with a 1.51 XG. However, I mean, part of that could be penalties as well, because that obviously includes the 0.76, which is, funnily enough, that's what Danny Ings got with just one shot on target. And Bruno, for his hat-trick, got a 1.06 XG from his three. He had 4 shots, 3 on target, 3 goals.
That's nuts, isn't it? Absolutely nuts. What a guy.
So Bruno, do you remember we were making the video, so the intro for the surgery, and we deliberately chose Bruno scoring a penalty, and now he decides to score 3 goals from open play just to make us look like idiots.
Yeah, well, I don't look like an idiot because it wasn't me who plugged that penalty in that intro, I'm sure. I wanted to do you remember the Cavani thing where he didn't touch it? That's what I wanted, definitely. But yeah, the headline one that we're going to go for after these is potential Gundawan replacements. And I wonder why this is a headline. Do you own it? Rich, not Richard. Do you own Gundawan?
No, he's not for me. No. At that price point, I went Greenwood, and I'm glad after seeing him on the floor writhing around.
And I didn't pick him, and Iceman certainly didn't pick him. Richard, do you have a Gundawan?
I have Gundawan, but that's
oh,
not
that's
why.
the headline. Okay, no, fair play. All right.
I mean, there's not much because it's been such an amazing game week for a lot of people. There's not actually that much to discuss.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we're going to get into our teams first of all, and then we move on to the headlines. So we're going to start with you, Rich. How was your game week, and what were the decisions that you had going into that game week?
So so as you mentioned a bit earlier, I write for Fantasy Football Hub with a team that I use a metric for, sort of just fantasy or FPL points as a metric. So that's a separate team that my wife runs because we're only allowed one team each. And that one was a lot of that was just debating, looking at the fixtures, looking at the FPL ticker that I build for each position. And the only basically Salah was a one that I wasn't too sure about, but he had great fixtures, part of a front three and a good price, so I went with him. Similar with Jared Bowen, and they're the only two different players that I've got from my actual team. But that team scored 108 points, and I think ranks kind of irrelevant right now, but it's about 79k, so a great start. Mm-hmm. My normal team is 102 points, which is at 253k, which is where I ended the last season, annoyingly. So I've not moved since the end of May. But with that one, it's a lot of fixtures. I like to look at fixtures to start with, like a block of 6 and the attack and the defence fixture tickers on Hub. That gives me a rough idea of who has good fixtures. So I've got Sanchez and Veltman. Obviously didn't come up trumps this week, but they've still got great fixtures and good underlying stats. Trent didn't go to the Euros, so he's fully rested, and he's just such a good asset. And like at 7.5, I still think he's going to make a mockery of that. I went with Tsimikas in the end because I know there's a lot of debate about Tsimikas or Jota, but I went with him just because a £4 million starting Liverpool left back. It seemed like a gift, so I just had to take it, and he looked really good against Norwich, so I'm pleased with that. Shaw. He's underpriced and he's got good attacking numbers. Greenwood, like I mentioned a second ago, with Rashford out, I just kind of figured he would be a bit more nailed, at least until Rashford is back.
Yeah.
Salah and Bruno, don't need to say anything about them. Tony, he blanked, but he's got a great record in the Championship and he's a very confident player. And then Ings and Antonio, just good finishers and good fixtures.
It's a monster score, and I mean, normally you'd expect to have a much higher rank. I mean, it's a very, very good rank. But I mean, if someone told you were going to get 102 points without any chips,
yeah,
it's a mad one, isn't it? And I had a good start to the season last season, so I just tried to think about what I did for prep last season, and after that, it kind of went to pot in about game week 3 onwards when I played my wildcard. So hopefully this year can maintain it a bit better.
Yeah, nice. I mean, were there any? So when you look back at that team you put together, and I believe it's on the screen now, and obviously you've gone through the players for the audio listeners. Is there anything you regret doing or regret not doing?
So the big debate in my head was Barnes or Rafinha, and I ended up going with Barnes just because I kind of thought, I think of the first 4, Barnes has got better potential to outscore him. I think Rafinha is the better player over the season. But I've gone for Barnes as just like a short-term upside pick. And I've got plenty of space to move down to Rafinha from Barnes if I want to. In the metric team, there was so much talk about Benrahma, wasn't there? And I stuck to my guns, and I was like, you're smiling. I stuck to my guns with Bowen over Benrahma, and Bowen looked good yesterday as well. But obviously Benrahma was the one that came away with the double-figure haul.
He skint 4 players in the box and then hit it right at the keeper. And I, who hadn't picked him, who had been talking about him pre-season, was raging when he got through all those players. And I was like, I can't believe he's about to score. I'm gonna get such a telling off Richard for it. And then he missed, and I was like, yeah. Like I've never thought I would celebrate Bowen missing something, but there you go. That's what FPL does to you.
Does, but I mean, it's hard to get things perfect in the first game week. So I think you pretty much got it close to perfect.
Yeah.
Like looking at your team ongoing and stuff.
It looks great.
Pleased with it.
Yeah, but so if we move on to my team, I think the only real decision I had was which midfielders I had to support Salah, Fernandes, and Benrahma. So I got 100 points, and I mean, after last season, I'm delighted. I didn't even get to this rank of 377k the entirety of last season. So I'm over the moon. I did go for Mahrez and Gundawan. Maybe it's a mistake. I mean, obviously we've got the headline about Gundawan, but there was a couple of annoying things there, wasn't there? Because De Bruyne unexpectedly returned, and maybe I trusted Pep too much, and then Gundawan got injured, which again we can't really account for. Mahrez is now off the back of two pretty poor performances, after the Community Shield and then yesterday.
Did you watch the game?
Yeah, I watched the game.
I didn't think he did that poorly. People keep saying that, but I don't know.
I think I expected more. I mean, there were quite exciting moments, weren't there? Because I remember you WhatsApped me when Mahrez and Gundawan were both stood over a couple of free kicks, and I was like, you
got both your players. No, but I keep seeing that. Sorry to derail your team thing, but everyone like Mahrez didn't play very well. Well, that's two. Now, to be fair, we don't expect many City players to play more than 2 games in a row to start them, and that's fine. And I don't mind that. And as a Mahrez owner, I'm probably might be biased, but he had a shot that should have maybe went in. He had he skinned a lot of people on the right hand side. He was doing really, really well. He was actually better than Sterling, which is probably why Sterling came off before him. The thing was that none of the City players did that well. As a team, it wasn't great. It's not. I feel like we're kind of lumping it on Mahrez because most of us own him, or he's the highest owned City player. But yeah, I don't think any of them did that well.
What makes it a bit twitchy is, in fact, you said. I mean, obviously they didn't score, and they didn't score in the Community Shield either. But obviously there was a lot of youth players playing. But then also this return of Kevin De Bruyne, that adds that extra level to it, doesn't it? Because I mean, if he's going to get in the team, and it sounds like he's not ready to play 90 minutes, but then can you trust Pep when Pep said he wasn't fit and then he came off the bench?
Yeah.
So I think there's just that bit of nervousness about it. I mean, I don't regret it. I think my reasoning behind going Mahrez and Gundawan, I can live with that. I took a risk. Maybe I should have gone for someone like Greenwood, but that's only in hindsight. So I'm honestly, I'm over the moon. I got 100 points. I wasn't stubborn on Bruno, which has been a big thing for me. So
yeah,
I feel like I've achieved something just by getting over that stumbling block that many people realised months and maybe even years ago, that you keep Bruno in your team. So yeah, delighted with that. I mean, Dave, you didn't quite make the 100 club, but you certainly had a good week.
Yeah, I did okay. I did all right. The main reasons why I didn't get into the 100 club was because everyone had Antonio and I made a last-ditch decision to get Mahrez instead. So I had to downgrade either Tony or Antonio, and I decided to go with Antonio because it meant that I could still have Barnes, because I really wanted Barnes after watching him play. So Barnes and Mahrez had to make way for Antonio. Unfortunately, it was either him or Ings, I guess, or I could have brought down Ings, but I didn't really want to. Ings is great, and I didn't know Antonio was on penalties. That was interesting. I thought he might be.
Well, I don't think he is anymore.
He won't be anymore.
Yeah, no, which is great. Who was it? Andy tweeted, because I don't know, for whatever reason, where Andy stays in Ireland, Let's Talk, he just knows what's going to happen before it does. I don't know if you ever follow him, while you're playing a game or watching a game.
He's quick.
But he tweeted saying something like, Antonio's on penalties. And then before the penalty went in my stream, or it didn't go in, Souček scored it, Andy had already tweeted saying Antonio's no longer on penalties. And I was like, what's happened? Did he miss? What's going on?
Kind of ruined it for you.
So yeah, but it was good for me as a non-owner that he missed it. So that was kind of okay. But yeah, I had all the other players everyone else has to Liverpool. I had Sanchez. Shaw didn't do much for me. I had made a very last ditch decision as well. I know we were talking about Soufal for a long time, and he was in my team as a fourth defender for a while in preseason. And I eventually decided to move him on because I had to look over the stats and everything, and I wasn't 100% on West Ham defense after all. And even though Soufal looked really good, I decided to just go safe and go Shaw. And then I'm pretty glad I did, because they didn't look very good in defense at all, really. They were a bit shaky. Newcastle looked a lot better than a lot of people thought they were going to. So yeah, I'm happy to have that 1 point with Shaw like everyone else.
I think your team's solid. There's no major issues. I think that applies to all of us. I mean, I've got the only issue with Gundawan.
Shall we move on then?
Yeah, I think we should. I mean, I did want to talk about Tony actually, because we obviously before the deadline, we did the little lunchtime deadline stream, didn't we? And we said because of crowds, we thought Brentford would score, and it was really frustrating that Tony didn't have a shot on target. But I just think we've just got to leave it and wait. I think I'm not annoyed at him. I don't think that was a mistake, because he's a lot less money than Ings, and Ings didn't have a shot until the 97th minute.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What do you think,
He's got
Rich?
Palace away next. He's got Palace away next, isn't he? So, like, for most people, they're probably looking to roll a transfer, unless you've got a Gundo shape problem or whatever. But I was really impressed by Tony. I thought, even though he didn't get amongst it on that end, he was dropping deep and creating stuff and being a nuisance. He's got so much awareness about him as well. I think he'll come good. Just got to be patient with him.
Yeah, I agree, and especially the point you make about the fixture. I don't think many people are going to be looking to sell, and we've got a couple of options we can move on to. But let's get into the first headline. So it's the headline I've been accused of making about my own team. It's potential Gundawan replacements. This can apply. Basically, it's about mid-priced midfielders. Let's call it that. Yeah. And we did have a question from FPL Najib saying, what should we do about Gundawan? Any good replacement? So it's obviously a very big talking topic in the community as well. So, I mean, Rich, are there any that stand out to you? I know you don't have Gundawan, but if you did, are there any players that stand out in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably look at someone like Salah. Did really well for Watford. I mean, Villa were terrible, but Salah's been on the radar of a lot of people for a couple of years now, and he's almost looks like he's starting to get to like a decent Premier League standard now. So Salah maybe, Benrahma, of course.
Yeah,
it's difficult. It's going to be difficult to ignore him if he keeps turning up like that, and if he's playing in that Lingard role, which Jesse did so well last year. And then he might be a bit of a no-brainer. Other names I thought about is that Burma for Brentford as well, because he was Tony's partner up front, and he looked really lively and more likely to score. But I've also wrote down, and it's a bit of a left field one. It's if you can afford to wait, someone like Adama Traore, because, and hear me out, terrible finishing, but he had like 6 shots, 4 in the box. I had a look at like his average position and things, and he was playing almost as far forward as Jimenez. And there was a particular incident where he was just put through by Moutinho, and you'd expect him to finish that 9 times out of 10. So he's got tricky fixtures for the next couple, but then Wolves are like top of the hub fixture ticker from like game week 4 or something, or maybe even game week 3. But he might be a left field option if you're looking for somebody differential early doors.
Yeah, I like that. Like you say, he is a bad finisher, but yeah, there's so many names, and I think if I had to pick one, you've mentioned Benrahma already, but obviously he's already in my team. But I think he'd be my priority, despite these rumours about Lingard. His price is gonna, I want to say rocket, but he's gonna go up in price, a couple of times. And I think it's always nice to get on those budget players early, especially when we've got so many premiums have performed this week.
So on the screen just now is Traore's heat map. I just wanted to have a wee look while you're saying that there. And he is in the box a lot more than he was last season. Not bad.
Yeah, he could do well. But it's like you say, there's a lot of obvious options, aren't there? Like Salah and Benrahma. So you'd probably go to somebody like that first. But
yeah. Interesting though, good pick.
Yeah.
The most annoying one, because I think Rafinha would be the most obvious one, but obviously since we recorded last week, there's all this confusion, isn't there, where Brazil have got obviously the international breaks between game week 3 and game week 4. So if he goes with the Brazil squad, there's all this talk over the quarantine rules, etc., which means he'll miss game week 4. But then that was against Liverpool anyway.
Yeah,
and then next 2 are nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's going to be he's one of those that, if you've got Rafinha, really, you can just have him, and you don't need to chop and change him out because he'll tick over nicely. So, he's a great option as well.
Yeah, and a lot of people in the chat are saying the same thing. Benrahma, Salah, there's a Pogba there, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit. Pogba's
gone up in price now, though.
Is that a problem for you?
Well, if people have Gundawan and no money in the bank, they're obviously Pogba and Gundawan were 7.5. So problem would be you literally couldn't afford him unless you get.
Did you do a sneaky transfer on Saturday though? Did you get one? Did you do it?
Say again?
Did you do a cheeky transfer on Saturday night for Pogba?
For Pogba? Yeah. No, do you know what? I thought about it and then I was like, no, I'm not doing it. Do you know, because last season I got Willian got 3 assists. And
I was gonna mention that too. I forgot about that. Crazy.
So I got him in, so I'm not falling for that again. And I think we haven't even mentioned Greenwood, have we?
No, that's another one
Araf
as well.
Alam said, is Greenwood a valid option throughout the season, or at least for the next 4 to 6 game weeks, with Cavani and Sancho being available? Would he be a valid FPL option? Basically, he's saying Greenwood. Would he be of interest to either of you?
Well, I've not got him yet, so but it's always a yet, isn't it? Like I there's a lot going on in my team right now, and I don't know if I'll be able to justify trying to do much to bring Greenwood in. However, like, he's always been a ticking time bomb because of his, the team and the fact that they bought, a massive player, and they've got Rashford coming back and blah, 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 blah. It was cool to see him play up front, though. That was interesting.
Yeah, I think Rashford's out till like October, apparently. So you might get a few weeks out of him. I started with him on that assumption that I think he'll at least get 4 or 5 game weeks, and then I'll deal with that on a wild card or something.
Yeah, exactly. And it means because you've done that, it means it's only going to cost you 1 transfer, right? Whereas people who didn't start with him, that's 2 transfers, and that's a lot. I mean, he is good though. Like, if I had another 0.5, I would definitely have had him over Barnes. It was just something that I couldn't afford. Great player. If you've got someone who is 7.5, like Gundo,
he's an interesting one, because I feel like, obviously, if you're replacing Gundawan, for example, you can replace him with Greenwood, but then it feels like you're replacing a player you didn't want to replace yet with a player who could have a limited shelf life.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're bringing in a player. I'd love to have him next week, but then you're almost looking at a way to get out of it.
Yeah.
And also, if you go to someone like Rafinha, or I like them in Mbembe shout as well, despite probably not wanting to double up on Brentford attackers, you're freeing up a bit of money, and that money can then be used. And obviously, this will go into our later headline about, that money can go towards someone like Son, particularly in a case like mine where I could free up $1 million. Then Mahrez to Son next week is simple. Probably.
Someone in the chat keeps saying, "Who do I get in for Barnes?" Like, it's been 1 game. Don't do anything for Barnes.
Stick with Barnes.
Yeah, he didn't look that bad. I mean, Leicester only scored 1 goal, but it won't be every day they play against a team that looked okay defensively. Like, they've got.
I don't think anything changed with him, because we knew he'd play 60, 70 minutes game week 1, and that's exactly what he did. So I don't think anything's changed there. So if you've gone through game week 1, stick with him, I reckon.
I don't understand
why. They play Norwich in game week 3 as well, didn't they? So you're going to want him. You're probably going to want him if you've got him.
Yeah, 100%. It was fun having someone who's going to be playing next week for against Norwich. I had 2 people playing, or 3 people playing against him this week, and then I'll have Barnes game week 3. Like, it was always a team that you wanted to target anyway. Although now it seems like Leeds is a decent targetable fixture, if at least if you're Man United. Like, that was. Did we expect 5-1?
I think a lack of Calvin Phillips exposes Leeds quite frequently. So whenever he's not playing, and I think Llorente was missing as well. So depending on when they come back, but yeah, like I don't think anyone expected it to be that heavy a defeat.
I think it's Leeds away as well, isn't it? And maybe I feel like I overlooked that myself a little bit too much, that that they were playing away from home, and maybe because I was quite scared not owning Greenwood, but only obviously once the game started. He should have scored early on. Actually, even talking about Pogba earlier, he should have scored as well. So
Mr. Sitter.
Yeah, so there could have been more in it as well.
I love that it's going to come back to this, that we still need to, because last season it didn't really matter if they were home or away, but I'm so glad it's back, because it adds a massive another element to the game. I think 8 out of 10 home teams won in game week 1, and one of the away teams that won was Liverpool against Norwich. So that was always going to happen regardless. So I think that's something that you definitely need to take into consideration now. And if you only started playing last season and this is your second season, it's a big change. But it really is. It makes the game so much more interesting. Adds that extra layer.
I think it's a nice change. It is a nice change. And football did just feel a bit more fun this weekend, even though I missed a lot of it because I was at a wedding. It just felt normal. They were at normal times. The crowd interaction was generally it's quite funny as well.
There was some decent crowd stuff happening.
And it just sounds different. You get so used to the fake crowd noise, and then it just, sometimes there is a delay because you can't tell if the ball's gone in the net. And I don't know.
It's a guy pressing a button, right? He's got to do it like, people just react, and he's like, reacting. Oh, I forgot to press 2. So there we go.
We had a question from FPL Bo at Anfield, who's asking our top 3 6.0 million midfielders for the 5th midfield slot.
All
So
right.
should we start with you, Rich, and then we'll go on to you, Dave? I mean, you don't have to do 3, but if there's any 6 millions that you particularly like.
So I think, Saar and Ben Rama. I really liked Bergwijn yesterday against Man City.
Yeah.
Especially if Kane's off. It looks like if Son then starts playing up front, and you can't get to Son, then if Bergwijn or however you pronounce his name, I'm butchering it, if he occupies that left flank, he looked pretty good yesterday. I think Lucas Moura 6.5, so I'd rule him out. But there's a lot of good options there. And Burmo again, but like you say, nobody's going to want to double up on the Brentford attack. So if you haven't got Tony, you can maybe move to Burmo. But Saar and Ben Rama are probably the clear ones for me.
I have thought about the double up, like only very fleeting thoughts, because it is Palace. Because I mean, separately as assets, I kind of like what I saw. I like what I saw. But it's just doubling up on Brentford attack could feel, I don't know, you could look back and be like, why on earth did I do that?
And I think because he's out of position as well, if he's going to keep playing up top and he's more likely to play the furthest forward, then eventually he'll become massively owned. So it might, if somebody's got a transfer they need to make this week, it might be nice to jump on early and see what happens.
Yeah. And what about yourself, Dave? You got any... I mean, Harrison's one's that's not been mentioned, but
yeah, it's hard to mention someone who just lost 5-1, isn't it? Although I do understand the Phillips thing. Like, I'm not taking the 1 game week seriously for Leeds. We know they're going to be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, look at what we did for England in the Euros.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Just had to get Dave to agree with that. Undefeated in normal time or extra time.
I heard. I'm not going to get into that. There's so many people that are not Scottish in the chat. Who was the guy that played midfield in Brentford who did really well? Is it Canos? Sanos?
Oh, Canos. That was interesting.
He did pretty well as well. Not just for points, but he seemed to be everywhere where he should be. Like Brentford's press is something else. Like I thought Leeds did well, but holy cow.
It was interesting with Canos though, because do you remember the pod we did with Jamie where he said like Mbeumo would be up front and Canos might be at wing back or full back, and then but they can switch. So he was pretty spot on with that. He
did very well, and to be fair, like even though that was the case, he was still getting in perfect positions. He was running up from behind. He knew where the spots were that he had to be at the right time, and he got his goal, and he got all 3 bonus, I'm sure, as well. So it was pretty good. And he's only 5.5 too. So if you don't own Tony and you don't want to do a transfer up front, and you're not too bothered, and you need, to save funds, for example, like Gundo to Son or whatever, and you're downgrading someone else, then 5.5, you can't do worse than that.
No, it's a difficult one, this one.
Or you could
I'm sure we get a bit more onto it later, what to do with someone like Gundawan, because I guess the alternative option, and it might be an option I have, is maybe I don't want to do it because of price drops and price rises, but there is a chance of just playing like a Brighton defender at home or even Eilings at home. So bringing in your cheap defenders. I guess we need more news from Pep as well, but it's almost like the prices are sort of forcing me to do a move when I'm not sure about it. But we go on to our second headline, which is much more exciting players. That's our premium players, and who do we want or need?
All right. So, Rich, what premium players are you eyeing up that you don't have?
Well, so what's interesting?
No, you're not Rich. Hold on.
Oh,
Sorry.
Not me. This is confusing. I was thinking why you're asking me and not the guest.
I thought you were giving me a bit more intel. I think Lukaku and Kane are the outstanding ones, just because we're kind of we know Lukaku's going to be playing for Chelsea in game week 2. I think Tuchel's practically confirmed it. He should be out of quarantine and ready to go. If Kane gets his move to City, I think he'll quickly become the most owned player in the game, and we'll see a lot of wild cards played just to get him in. Son interests me as well now, just because of how he played against Man City. I mean, that's always going to be your trickiest games against Man City, and Nuno had them well drilled and they knew their roles well. So I think Son is probably a good shout. But I'm always attracted to sexy new strikers, and so somebody like Lukaku or Kane, the minute they're active in the game, I think everyone's going to try and get to them if Me, probably I'll try and wait till game week 7 or 8 on a wild card with the international break. But I think, their ownership will rocket the minute that Kane especially is classed as active, whichever team he plays.
I totally, absolutely agree with everything you said, and also want to add that when we discussed this pre-season, either on the pod or in group chats or on Twitter or whatever, it was always the case of like Salah's untouchable, and Bruno could potentially pave the way for a Kane or whatever, right? But after game week 1, that has to have changed, right, Richard?
Yeah, it's funny you asked me, isn't it? Because I've not been anti Bruno, but I've never captained him, and I've always looked for ways to not have him.
And you were on Mane for a little bit as well, weren't you? In some of our draft videos and stuff.
Yeah, probably if Robertson hadn't got injured, there was a chance I ended up with Mane, because that completely changed the whole structure of my team and made Bruno quite easy to get in.
Yep.
And it might have been the case for a lot of people. Like his ownership may well have, Bruno's ownership may have increased because of that Robertson injury.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, after that performance at the weekend, it's hard for me to argue, against it. Obviously, I asked both of you two, who would you captain over the next 6 game weeks? I was meant to prepare a little graphic, but I've just realised it didn't.
It's okay. We've got the fixtures up in front of us, so we can have a wee look.
I mean, basically, we didn't really need a graphic because you guys were saying you're going to captain Salah, Bruno, and there was like a Spurs one in there for game week 3. That was basically the consensus. There was no, captaining Lukaku in the first up till game week 7. So
yeah.
It does feel a little bit like people might just stick, which is it's a bit of a shame, really. I mean, obviously, if the Kane deal had happened earlier, we might have seen a few more people putting in placeholders to get Kane. Like we were talking about getting Vardy in, weren't we? And obviously, he scored, but only got 5 points.
Yeah.
But didn't see many people going for that in the end. So it's such a boring answer, isn't it? To say it's like it's a wait and see, really. And because I couldn't imagine now, I was quite blasé about, having Bruno. I kept calling him a placeholder, and I know Dave was getting offended by me calling him.
Well, it wasn't offended. It was mostly just like, let's not forget he is actually amazing, and it was a reason why he was the best scoring player, or midfielder at least. Did Kane beat him in the end last season? I can't even mind. But yeah, he's been doing pretty good, man. I didn't expect him to get a hat trick.
Yeah.
But
no, I've upgraded him from a placeholder to a, I don't know,
potential captain.
Yeah, potential captain in my team. Do you know one of the arguments I've always had against Bruno as well was I like to try and captain players who I think can get a hat trick, and I didn't think Bruno could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's completely changed now. Whether it happens again or not, I don't know. It might be like Salah, where this is his highest game week score of the season.
What did he say on Instagram? He was just waiting for people to fill the stadium before he got his hat trick. So there you go. I think so. I mean, either of you going to go for Kane or Lukaku in the next couple of weeks? I mean, what if Lukaku comes out of the weekend now and scores a hat trick? Against Arsenal. No, but their fixtures are so rubbish. Sorry, Rich, you go.
Yeah, I was just to say. I mean, I'm primarily a fixtures guy. I know that a lot of people think form doesn't exist, but that's probably a different topic or a different time. But I've looked at, as part of something that I wrote for Fantasy Football Hub, we've looked at drafts that you can fit Bruno, Salah, Kane, and Trent into, and they weren't too bad. Like they weren't too bad. One of them I think it was like Kane and DCL up front, for example, with some of the cheaper midfielders. And then basically a stack of like 4.5 defenders next to Trent. Or if you go without Trent, you're probably dropping down to somebody like a Luke Shaw. So it's doable. And if you were to opt for Lukaku over Kane, then that's another 1 million towards the budget. So, I mean, a few of us put drafts together and we felt like it could be done. But then some of the replies basically just said, no, it can't be done. But I think people are going to have to start, if they want all of them, they're going to have to start looking at drafts like that to get all of the players they want.
I think that's why with Gundawan, I might be a little bit more open. Instead of going for someone like Greenwood, you could start looking at those Abuembos or that kind of price point, and then you're slowly taking the money out. Especially if Mahrez then comes down instead of up. But then Son's a problem because there's a lot of desirable stuff about him after this weekend. But if you go for someone like Son, then you're not going to be able to get Lukaku or if you have a Son, Salah, Bruno midfield with Trent, and even if you filled it with a load of rubbish apart from that, it's going to be very hard to fill it with then Lukaku and Kane.
Hey, if Tottenham keep playing like that, then Son's going to outscore Lukaku and Kane if Kane moves. Like, I know that City are awesome, right? But they share the goals, no question about it. Son is the obvious outward, like the guy who's going to score all their goals. So yeah, like, and he's
I think
OOP.
we'll learn a lot this weekend. I think that Wolves game about Spurs, and I think we'll get our answer if we need to go for Son or not. And that's why I can understand why a lot of people are patiently waiting to pounce with 2 transfers.
Yeah. I mean, it's the perfect storm, right, for Mahrez owners, because he's only a million off, and there's things we can do after game week 2. But I wish I started with him. Like, just watching that game against City and then him having so many chances, and it was weird because if you watch the game, you'll know that he kept, like, he'll get into the box and he would turn around and he wouldn't take that shot, and it was almost as if he was in two minds. He's playing a new position, etc. I know he's played there before, but he just seemed like he wasn't happy with where he was, and he wanted to turn around and pass it and stuff. And that wasn't like the Son that we knew, especially counter-attack Son. But then when he did eventually like start taking shots, they obviously went in at halftime, and he was told like, no, go to just start shooting, you idiot. Like, what you doing? And then he did, and he was amazing. And the amount of quality that he's got, there's no point that he shouldn't be shooting. He's difficult to mark because he can shoot with both his left and his right, and all that good stuff that you learn off.
Should be on pens as well.
Yeah, and he definitely should be, right?
Set pieces. Yeah, there's a lot of desirable stuff with him there.
We should consider him a premium. He's 10 million, so we could do, double figures.
It does get to the point though, and that's why I was messaging you guys to who you captain him basically, because it does get to the point where you've got so many premiums. Some of these you're never gonna captain, but so it's going to be interesting because I like the idea of what Rich was saying about that structure where you can squeeze all these players in, but Son's just making it even more difficult.
Yeah, it was a good practice though, or sorry, a good exercise when you said we should write down who we're going to captain over the next 6 weeks, and I think we were talking about.
I mean, it was the general. We did the 8 symbols with the general, didn't we? And he loves his. I think he calls it a captain matrix.
But he said that he spends 2 minutes on captains, if that. He goes, who's the best fixture? Who's the best in form? Oh, it's probably we'll go Bruno this week, and that's it. That's all he does. He doesn't really go too much into it. But it was really good to write down the next 6.
I think you're downplaying what he does there. You're like, he closes his eyes and points.
Well, he's very good at this. Okay, hold on. He's very good at this game, and he is able to do it in 2 minutes. Okay, it wouldn't be 2 minutes for me, or for definitely not for Richard. But it's the general. Okay, but my point is that he doesn't overthink his captaincy. And when I was writing all of my captains down for the next 6 weeks, I only wrote down Salah's name maybe once actually. Thinking about it now, maybe twice, whereas Bruno was in there 3 times, and I think I put Lukaku for game week 7 against Southampton.
Oh, you did have Lukaku,
and that is only because Liverpool are playing Man City that week, and I think Man United are playing Everton or something like that. So it wasn't a very good fixture for either of the people that I had. But I think we need to start thinking about Spurs as a genuine contender for. That we don't take hits unless it's for our captain. Like, if Spurs are playing someone who has been rubbish and they look really good against Wolves, it's going to be very difficult for me not to move Mahrez on for him. He's probably my highest target.
Here's one for you both then. Would you, if you have Mahrez and you had the money available to move to Son this week, would you do it now, or is it's still a wait, isn't it?
I'd wait.
Oh, I might do it now.
Obviously, Dave doesn't have the money, but
yeah, I think. I don't know. I almost feel like the Wolves fixture might be easier for someone like Son than the Watford one, because Watford last year defensively in the Championship were very good, although they haven't had a very good pre-season. Whereas Wolves, the new manager likes to come out and attack, and that would give Son a bit more space, especially with Bergwijn and Moura behind him. But I'd still wait. Like, I think there's so much information to be gained, in these early weeks that it might pay off, but if it doesn't, or you get another injury and stuff, you're up the creek without a paddle.
What kind of creek? No, I'm joking.
Continue. It's a TV show.
What a show. I've got Spurs' fixtures on the screen just now. Wolves, then Watford, Crystal Palace and Chelsea, and you guys can't see it, but it's Arsenal and Aston Villa next. So very mixed, but as we've seen with City, like if they're playing defensively, he's great on the counter. So, and we've seen him do it against teams that aren't, very attacking, like Burnley. Remember that famous goal that he scored? So yeah, he can do it with any team. I'm not so concerned. The difference between him and Mahrez is simply he'll play every single game, and it's hard to beat that, especially if he's in form, right? Richard.
Yeah, it's quite boring saying to wait, but I do think it is the right decision, and that again defends my decision that having Gundawan as a headline, because I think he's the only issue people have got in their teams, unless they've gone like very off template and different players to the ones that have been commonly recommended on Twitter and on podcasts, etc.
Yeah,
I don't see any players that people have as part of a template that are like a big issue.
Did anyone else get injured? I know there was no red cards, right? So no red cards, so no one's really got to do anything with that.
No.
Gundawan
Everyone just
was
got
the only one that
loads
got
of
injured.
all the players that hauled seem to be in the template, unless people want to start doing hits for like Kasper Schmeichel or stuff like that, or Woodman, for example. But
shout out to Planet. I think James went for Pereira, who was off template, who hauled.
Yeah, he had no Bruno and outscored me and you, Dave.
Yeah.
Well, impressive.
There you go.
So it kind of does back up the Bruno theory. So
well, if you do things like Pereira, oh my goodness. All right, so we are coming up to the piss break. So we're going to just go for it now. Natural stop in the chat. And then we'll come back refreshed, renewed, and ready for headline 3. Yeah, Rich, good idea.
Do I have to say yeah? Yes,
you don't have to.
Dave,
I'm just
brilliant idea. I totally agree. Why would I disagree?
I don't know. You're usually the one who needs a piss. All right.
I'm not like bursting. Like I'm an adult.
All right. For people who are in the YouTube chat just now, this is a special time where Rich probably will go for a piss, but we're gonna do a question and answer. So I'm just gonna go back and read some of your stuff. It doesn't really go on the pod. Rich, you're here. Do you need to relieve yourself?
No, I'm good, man. I'm good.
Oh,
are you both here? You didn't even do that on purpose, did you? So I'm going to go through some questions, and feel free, guys, to leave or not. FPL SWAT said, nailed it, Dave. He was clearly told to shoot on site at halftime by Nuno, I reckon. Thank you very much. I figured I'd nailed that. Good to know. Patrick says, Malfinator1 says, what juice is Rich sipping on? I'm assuming...
he's a friend, Malpy. He's a great guy. I am on a layer cake, mate, because I thought the coffee stout at 9% was too much for this.
Yeah, no, I'm
feeling we have a rule on this pod, nothing over 8%.
In that case, I'm fine.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because otherwise it can get very silly and people start doing stuff like Captain and Ben Rama.
Did that come from you drinking like straight whiskey or something?
No, it's just a great pick.
It was a good pick.
It's a great pick.
Tesco, thank you very much. Conglomerate business Tesco is in the chat. Are we worried about Son's price rise? I don't think I'm worried about price rises in general. I'm going to wildcard fairly soon, I think, probably, as I always do. And, when you wildcard, prices don't matter. You just pick less players if you need to. What about you guys? Do you care about price rises?
No, I think last year was a really good lesson for me in terms of just being patient and waiting to see what happens. I think there'll be should be less COVID issues, but there might still be bits and bobs. So it's going to be very rare that I make a super early transfer this season. I think I'm just going to try and hold for as long as possible.
Bamford is a good captaincy option this week, says Xavier. What a lovely name. Richard, are you thinking about Leeds at all? Have you got Leeds? Have you got Rafinha? You don't, do you?
I've got Eiling.
Who
really wound me up because I had him over Dallas all of last season. I remember a disallowed goal he had, and then he's obviously on my bench and he scores. But, I mean, I was never going to play him, and if I'd known they'd concede 5. But anyway, you're putting me off on a tangent now. Oh, Leeds. I am looking at Rafinha in for Gundawan as one option.
Would you captain Bamford versus Everton?
No.
No. It's rule number 3 or something. Simple captain choices. Don't go nuts.
I'm boring now. To be honest, I never get that nuts with my captain. I think there's 2 obvious ones this season.
Srinjoy says that we are fixture-proof champions of Europe. I'm assuming he's a Chelsea fan. Alonso Golden Boot. Yeah, he's definitely a Chelsea fan. Alonso did really well. Obviously, we don't know how long Chilwell's going to be out, but I would love it if he could just nail that. I know he's a murderer and everything, right? But I still would put him in my team if I absolutely had to.
Yeah, I mean, I aim for the players who get the best points, so I have no problem having him in my team. But yeah, I mean, Chilwell's going to be first choice, you'd imagine. And it probably, because I thought Alonso was on the way out, so maybe it just makes Chilwell a little bit more risky.
Fair play. Should we have our faces up when we're doing this wee bit for YouTube? It doesn't really make sense for us to not have our faces up because it is only for YouTube. I don't really know. Makes this graphic kind of obsolete. I'm going to put our faces back up. But we're not starting yet. There's a few more questions. Keep your questions coming, guys. We'll go through as many as we can, and I'm going to go get water as well. But before I do, there was a good question. Hold on. Early doors, of course, would you see yourself transferring either Bruno or Salah to Son for game week 3? So if Son looked unstoppable, would you guys actually get rid of just going on the premium chat we had?
No, I don't think so, because I think maybe for game week 4 when they play Palace, because I feel like Watford are going to be better than Palace this season, and I know that FPL Wilson is going to be abusive to me for saying that, but I feel like Watford are well drilled. They know what they're doing. Palace have got so much change, new manager, new players, like so many new players, and although some of them are like decent-ish quality, I wouldn't be bringing in Son for Watford. I'd maybe if you want him, go for the Palace game.
Yeah, fair play. Right, Richard, you keep reading out stuff and get water.
Yeah. Oh, I better get the chat up. Here we go. What was the last question you asked?
Get Son in for Watford.
Oh, that was it. I'm so bad at keeping up with the chat. I literally can't multitask. Okay, so let's see. I'm really bad at this. Rubber Ducky, which premium do you remove for Kane / Lukaku? TAA. Do you know another thing before we do the question? I also can't read stuff out. We had to do a quiz for the FPL merch stream, and James Copeland sent me all of the questions to ask, and I can't read stuff out. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is at all. But Rubber Ducky is basically asking, what premium would you remove for Kane or Lukaku? I think we sort of covered it, haven't we? Is it going to be just a wait and see? Like, I mean, it depends. Like, are you saying to me that I have to get Kane or Lukaku in? Because at the moment, and obviously it's such a small sample size, but at the moment, I'm just going to wait. Rubber Ducky saying that you have to. Rubber Ducky, I know Rubber Ducky. He's a great guy. Right, Rubber Ducky, I'd get rid of Bruno if I had to. If it's Bruno or Salah, I'd probably get rid of Bruno. If we're throwing Trent in, yeah, then it would probably be Trent, annoyingly. But yeah, I think we're all going to face this problem at some point if Kane or Lukaku start going mental. So, and it can change so quickly, can't it, as well? Yeah. All right. I think I'd lead that way. I'd lose Bruno before Salah, but at the moment, I haven't got the guts.
Last question, and we'll get back to it. Michael Scott, great name, reminds me of that famous dude. Is Rafinha a hold or jump on Benrahma, particularly as Rafinha may miss game week 4? That's a great question. Just jump in. Yeah, I wouldn't be making any transfers this week if you don't have to. Yeah, just
I agree.
Just try and field 11, because if you've only just built a squad, so you must have built a squad that you're happy with.
Yeah,
I mean, roll if you can.
It is the reason why I think it's more interesting than just should we get Son in is because Rafinha, we didn't really find out until last minute that Rafinha made the squad for the internationals. So it could be that people woke up and were like, wait, what? Rafinha's maybe not in, and then they see Benrahma, who they were thinking of, obviously, because we were shouting them so much. They wake up and they see Benrahma outscored Rafinha. Leeds didn't look that good. You're losing money already because Benrahma's gone up, and not only that, but you might only have 3 games with him, whereas Benrahma might have 4. So, what about you, Richard?
Yeah, I mean,
so
Rafinha's
calling
next.
you Richard.
is next. People in the chat call me Richard.
You should. Yeah, everyone in the chat, say hi to Richard for me. It'd be lovely. Right. I want to see a bunch of Richards.
I mean, Leeds next 2. They look really, really good, and I do wonder. Part of me wonders with replacing Gundawan, is it if I'm overlooking too much stuff if I don't go for him? As in, if Leeds go off in the next 2 games and I've not gone for Rafinha, then I'm probably going to look back and be like, why did I do that? All because he's potentially missing a game against Liverpool in game week 4, which isn't that great anyway.
You'd probably bench him anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I have looked at my well, that game week's not the nicest game week for the defenders that I've chosen. Maybe I haven't chosen the best defenders for that game week because I've also got Eiling who could cover, but obviously it's then against Liverpool.
Yeah.
So yeah, but should we get back from the piss break?
Yeah, we definitely will. Patrick said repost and thoughts on 5 strikers. Blah 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 blah. Who could be the 5 mids, 4 defenders? I don't want to answer this question. I don't want to ask the question to the other guys simply because it's only been one game week. We do not know who's going to be starting. It could have been a weird situation. I don't think we should talk about any Billers until next week.
No, and you're so much better at reading stuff out than me, by the way.
Oh yeah, I
need
did a
you,
stream
mate.
with you once, for
I
the
said.
quiz one. Oh my goodness, the worst! I've never seen someone struggle with words so much. And you're fine
can't read
normally.
stuff.
See, when we're recording stuff, you're absolutely fine. But when we're like live, you're just shit the bed.
But when we're recording, I haven't written stuff down because otherwise I don't know. I just sound like a robot and not a robot that can't read.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. You're gonna have to sort that out because we do a live stream now. All right.
I'll take up reading lessons.
All right, welcome back everyone from that lovely piss break. Next headline is Rich's metric team. So Rich, you want to talk to us a little bit about what you do and go into as much detail as you like, buddy?
Sure. So I write for Fantasy Football Hub about a team called the very well named Using FPL Points as a Metric Team, because I can't think of anything better to call it at the moment. So I got the idea of it from, I play NFL fantasy, much like I know that Richard does as well. And there's a website that uses something called Fantasy Points Allowed, and they have a fixture ticker by a specific position about who concedes the most points to that position. So in NFL, you've got wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks, etc. Whereas in FPL, we've got goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, forwards. So I kind of looked at it and thought I might be able to do something similar here. So I started collating data and working out if I can use this as like a fixture ticker to target, I don't know, say midfielders with playing 3 of the 4 teams conceding the most points to midfielders. And it started off as just a bit of an experiment, and I noticed that Gerard Deulofeu at Watford was about to play, I think it was Chelsea at the time. They were conceding one of the most points to forwards, and I was like, oh, I've got a draft team. I'll stick him in that and see if it works. And oddly, he scored a goal, and it was a penalty, so it was a bit fortuitous, but it gave me the impetus to stick with it.
Yeah.
And then I did a bit of writing and sort of predicting who I thought might do well, and the big success was Pepe against Newcastle, and nobody really was that asked about Pepe because he wasn't doing very well, but he went and got 17 points against Newcastle.
It was a big haul.
He absolutely hauled. And so then I just thought, well, I'm going to stick with this now. And so each position has got their own fixture ticker rather than just the one you'll see on Hub or the FPL site. Each position has got their own fixture ticker, which has differing fixtures depending on the teams that are conceding the most points to that position. I also do it on a points per game basis that properly drills down on it. So so that's the one that if you identify a decent run, then you can go and look at something like this and see if that specific fixture. So I don't know. I mean, this is last season's data, but Sheffield United away, for example, were just terrible. They were absolutely awful, and that makes sense because they went down. They were just rubbish. But I use it as like a good starting point for identifying players, and then I'll go away and I'll look at things like Opta stats and other things like that, just to try and work out if that team is worth targeting. And then I'll look at the player that I would like to bring in from that team at that position, be it a Salah at Watford, for example, because he's out of position. That might then help me think, well, I'm going to go for Salah because he's the obvious pick, and so on and so forth. So it's doing all right. I think I set a target of 100k finish, or a 5-figure finish every season, and I finished. I think it was just outside the top 100k last year. So I'm going again, and hopefully I can have a bit more joy.
Did you refine it for this season? Do you keep learning new things as you go through the season?
Yeah. So what I want to do this year is I want to do almost like in addition to the overall tables, it's like maybe 4 weekly ones as well, and then look back and I'll try and then use that to predict teams that they might have been rubbish for the first 4 weeks, but have got better in the next 4 weeks, and so on and so forth. But it's ever evolving, and like I'm always open to feedback. So if somebody reads the article and thinks, I think you should do it like this way, or how about doing it this, and I want to take on as much sort of feedback about it as possible, because I ultimately I want it to be useful for other people. So yeah, if people read it and they think, oh, you could maybe do this, then yeah, drop me a message.
So when setting up, so either for game week 1 or even for next week, are there any things that really jump out at you that the metric team, might? And I realise it's early days, like you say, like a lot of that data you've still got is from last year, and it will evolve over the coming weeks. But
so for this year, I looked at it initially with the last season data, and basically I wanted to compare that to like an actual fixture ticker that like Fantasy Football Hub do, and just see if there were any patterns. If my stuff was similar to like the Hub fixture ticker, which take into account loads of different things.
Yeah.
And if they were both a match, then I would be like, right, I'm just going to go with it, because it's an experiment. I want to see what happens with it. And that's why I got somebody like Salah, for example, because they were high on the fixture ticker for Hub. They've got good fixtures on my ticker as well. And I thought, even though it's Watford and they might not, adapt to the Premier League as well as, you'd assume, I'm going to give it a go anyway. And it's interesting because I overlooked Brentford completely. Like Brentford have got decent fixtures according to last season's data.
Mm-hmm.
But I was quite like, well, it's Brentford. I don't want to risk it too much. And I was initially on Pickford, but then I sort of saw the highlights of Everton versus Man United in pre-season and just jumped off him straight away.
Same thing, yeah.
But yeah, like it's difficult to try and use last season's data to anticipate what's going to happen for any stat you want to use.
Yep.
You could go back and look at XG for the last 8 weeks, and that's not going to tell you or help you with what's going to happen. But when you haven't got much information to go by, I went with it and I had a good week to start with.
I like that, and I like that you use it along with other things as well. Like like part of if you use fixture ticker along with that, you could use algorithms. Obviously, you're still talking about watching pre-season games and stuff. But yeah, no, it's honestly really interesting. Like you said, you've got your articles that people can check out, and it'll be interesting to see how it develops for the promoted teams after the next few weeks. I mean, did you say it might be like 4 or 5 weeks until we can start getting something from that?
Yeah, so I mean, so last season I wildcarded in game week 4 because I thought, right, that's a 4-week window. I'm going to stick a wildcard down, and I'm gonna go with it. And I remember one of the players I brought in was what was his name? I think it was Joe Bryan from Fulham, because Fulham had nice fixtures, and I was like, well, I'm using this as an experiment. I want a Fulham defender, even though they're not very good defensively. I'll pick the one that's most nailed. So Joe Bryan, he carries some attacking threat, and then he was benched for the first time all season. And I was just like, right, okay, fine. So this year, I think from game week 4, I'll start tweeting with the threads about the tables, because at the moment some of the tables there's like error messages in the formula and stuff. But from game week 4, I'll start tweeting about like threads of the data, and then I think maybe game week 8 this year is when I'll wildcard, because I'll have double the amount of information I had last year.
It's interesting with Joe Bryan, because he obviously got them promoted. He scored that brace that got them promoted. Right. So, and
I was kind of hoping that he was the most nailed. He's got attacking threat. It might really sort of make people take notice of this team, and then he got benched. But yeah, there are caveats to it. It's like defense. Some defenses score higher because they play 5 at the back, whereas some will play 4, and teams like Spurs prior to Harry Kane, if he leaves, would only play with Kane up top as a forward, and like teams like Burnley will score quite well because Dyke likes to substitute forwards for forwards quite a lot, and they play with 2 up top. So there's caveats to anything. But
that'd be so interesting if you could add that to the spreadsheet, like do just checks to see if the defense is going to be good or bad, or if they're going to be playing 4-4-2 or 3-5-2 or whatever, and like you could add that to that. But that would take so much guesswork too. It would make it a bit obsolete.
Yeah, I mean, I started to sort of track formations, and then whenever I would write about it, I'd be like, bear in mind that like Crystal Palace Kouyaté last season was a midfielder, and so he played at defence all the time, and so they only ever played with 3 defenders, and so they scored really low, not just because they weren't very good, but because they only played with 3 defenders. So there's like a caveat that you've got to include there. But yeah, like I think it's going relatively well, and it's just a different way of looking at things. But I would always say, like you said, Rich, that don't use it on its own. You use it in conjunction with other things, like you do any other stats. Use it as like a balance it with other things, and it might be useful to you.
Nice. That's perfect. So what we do is we move on to our questions now. We have to remember we have to do our teams for next week as well, which obviously we've not had to do the last few episodes.
Oh, yeah.
So
we got to talk about our teams. But for anyone interested, we'll have a link to the article down below after we go off live. So if you want to check that out, you can do.
Or follow Rich on Twitter, and you can get his see his threads as well.
Updated threads. Gameweek 4. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I love this kind of stuff. That's why I started playing FPL, to be fair. Just reading stats and seeing if you can do it without watching games. Turns out it's not as hard as it looks.
You've been watching a lot of games recently.
I've been doing it now.
I've noticed. Yeah.
I've been doing it now. But I mean, when I started, I didn't watch any games, and I got like top 5k, and I was like, this. And then I started watching games, and all went downhill. It just means my eye test is rubbish.
Eye test in the mud, as they say.
Aye. Sorry, continue.
So I guess we'll go through our mini leagues, because we've actually got mini leagues now as well. So you can join the FPL Surgery Podcast League, and the code for that is 4U2742. I'm sure most people are in that as well. And then J-Roy's had quite a good idea on our Slack channel. He's actually gone on live FPL, and he's got us all the latest ownerships for the leagues. So for our Patreon league, we've got all the latest ownerships there. So I think Dave's going to pop that on the screen.
Yep. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it myself. This is not smooth.
It's not smooth.
This is not smooth.
Just read them out as you go.
Yeah, I can't find them. So we're gonna skip that bit. We'll come back to the leagues. Questions. Daniel Malpass. Which has better overall returns potential? Money in the bank for future trades, or using all available cash for current fixtures? Now, this is interesting, because obviously that was something where you were saying you might be tempted to move Mahrez to Son if you had money in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what do you both think about that?
The
value of money in the bank.
Yeah, I'd rather have my cash in my team and make it work for me straight away. Sort of like, especially with game week 1, you want to make a good start. If you've got like $500,000 or $1 million left in the bank just in case, but not like £4.5 million or whatever. I understand why maybe you're booking in a transfer up to a Kane or a Lukaku, but if you've got that cash in the bank, the chances are you probably haven't got you've either not got a Bruno, a Salah, a Trent, or somebody that could be scoring you points in the meantime. So I'd rather have the majority of my cash in my starting 11 to start with, even despite the temptation to wait for somebody like Kane or Lukaku.
It's interesting, because I've heard Stefan call it before, like he's like, get your money on the table. So to have those first 11 players, you've got your money, in use. Yeah. And especially, I guess, more maybe towards the end of the season when your team's a little bit more set. But I do kind of wish I had that flexibility now, because I had a couple of drafts where I did have a little bit of money in the bank. And it's interesting with this Gundawan transfer that I now have the opportunity to get a bit of money behind me, in case I want to move to Son or Lukaku or whoever. So I think it does come into your thinking, but I think, like you said, I wouldn't deliberately go for it. If I thought a player was considerably worse than another, I wouldn't keep the money in the bank for the sake of it.
Yeah.
I think I'm only doing it because I don't know if Rafinha and Greenwood are that like $1 million apart in terms of how good they are. And I could be proven completely wrong this weekend, but I mean more as a long-term asset as well. So no, that's a very interesting question. We'll move on now. So we've got one from Hi. Should I keep my faith in Mane, or should I switch to Salah? So obviously some people did go for Mane.
Ooh. Ouch.
What would you guys do if you were in a situation like that? Just bite the bullet, and I guess you'd need the extra 0.5 as well.
I'm assuming he has it because he didn't add, or she didn't add anything like, should I downgrade this person or whatever?
Like for a hit. Okay, so assume you would just be using a transfer. I mean, I think I would.
Game week 1, would you?
The thing is, I know I looked at Mane, but I wouldn't have gone Mane over Salah.
Aye,
so I'm not just saying it now.
What we really need is a little bit of a time machine thing going on here, where you can go back in time, slap yourself.
Yeah, listen to Stefan, and then
just give yourself a massive slap, and then be like, snap out of it. We're going for Salah. That's what you should do.
I'd ask yourself why. Why did you go? Because you must have had a reason. Like if if there's something that's telling you to go Mane over Salah, it's see it out. Like I know that Salah is I mean he's the better pick in my opinion because he's on penalties and he's just more explosive. But Mane against Norwich, he still had 3 shots. A couple were in the box. I think one was on target. He made 3 key passes.
Yeah.
And, Liverpool, we've got good fixtures. So I'm he's not going to blank forever. But go and ask yourself why you picked him in the first place, and go with your instinct, go with your gut. There's so many decisions that I make going with sort of without ignoring my instinct and it not paying off. So yeah, if you've picked Mane for a reason, stick with him.
Yeah.
See where it gets you.
You must have known that Salah could potentially outperform Mane because it's happened very often. So it's not like you went in there with Mane thinking, oh, he's definitely going to beat Salah and everyone else is wrong. Like this was always going to be an outcome that was predictable. So I agree.
I like Rich's take on that actually. Going back to the original decision instead of what you should do now. Because it is a very, very good point.
Keep the faith. I agree.
Yeah, you do sometimes. I mean, this isn't a way to predict how things happen. But, sometimes you do find, people who do badly in Game Week 2, then suddenly, people who do badly in Game Week 1 can then do better in Game Week 2 and vice versa. It's going to be very hard for those teams who've already got 100 points to then go ahead and get 100 points again. I mean, obviously, I guess pods like Who Got This would say that's gambler's fallacy. But, it's something we've seen time and time again. So maybe you don't need to panic. I just think personally I would go back to Salah, but then I would have gone for Salah in the first place. So maybe we're biased and Rich is giving it more from their point of view.
But I would say that's good advice for anyone you've went for over someone else, right? We've been talking about it a lot. I'm assuming loads of other pods are, you shouldn't be doing much in Game Week 1, but it is totally worth looking at your original idea. Why didn't I go for Bruno? Why did I go for these guys? Why didn't I go for Salah? Why did I go for Mane? Yeah. Et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I agree. I'm excited for the next question.
Is this Ferrell's one?
Yep.
Yeah, I thought it might be. Thank you, Ferrell. So the first question is for Rich. At what point do we jump off Jota? At 7.5, can we keep him for the long haul super sub? Or should we be investing that amount of money into a nailed asset? So Jota.
I think if you started with him, it's a bit like the Mane one. If you started with him, you've got to keep him for at least a couple more weeks. Like just because... And Flappy, you know this more than anyone. Like Jota can do damage off the bench, so even if he doesn't start, he can properly come on and turn the game around. So I'd be keeping him. Maybe not for the long haul. Give him another 2 or 3 weeks, at least until you've got a bit more information and you can make a decision with a bit more information, a more informed decision. Because Firmino started scoring goals all of a sudden, which I didn't expect. He's been off the boil for ages now, and so it might be that Klopp's quite a loyal manager as well. So I think he'll give Firmino plenty of opportunity. He won't just say you're done. Jota's going to start from now. So I'd keep him for a couple of weeks and reevaluate maybe after the international break. I'd definitely hold him for the short term.
Great I like that answer. I mean, it does seem to be a common answer, doesn't it, for all of these? But again, they've obviously gone for, or Ferrell's obviously gone for Jota over, say, Tsimikas or something. So and I made the opposite decision just because I was a bit worried, and I had Greenwood in that Jota spot, and he's a risk as well. So I didn't want too many fires to potentially have to put out within 3 or 4 weeks. So I mean, Tsimikas is technically a fire himself, but I can just stick him on the bench until I'm ready to wildcard. It's classed as a dead spot, but I think it might just be that he ticks over nicely in bits like we've seen before.
Yeah. We got a few questions about Jota, didn't we? But Farrell added another wee bit. Do we not want to read that out, or you want to just move on, Rich?
Oh, yeah, he was asking how my eye was.
Can I show people?
No.
Oh, he got stung in the eye.
Yeah, so Farrell's an optician. So when it happened, I messaged him. I got mosquito bit me on the
people. Oh, you look so good. You look like a fisherman that's on shore that has been brutally punched. I'm looking at it I've got it up just in case you're...
Give it a quick flash if you want, I don't mind.
Yeah? Oh, look at that. Who gets stung in the eye?
People don't want to see this.
I do. I thought it was great. It's my screensaver now.
Was it painful?
I woke up, it was just a little bit itchy. And then it's just popped up I can see the YouTube. It's just popped up again for me. It was a little bit itchy, and I was like, "What's happened?" And then when you put your camera on selfie mode, I was like, "What the?" So I had to go to the pharmacy after messaging Ferrell.
You messaged the group chat saying my eye's been stung, and I was like, "What were you doing?" And you said, "Oh, I just left the window open." I was like, "I'm never coming to Reading ever."
Oh mate, it's horrible up here.
Oh, I can't
wait to see the chat after that. We've got one final question, and then we're going to get onto our trap-tins.
Go for it.
So Hibbo has asked, will Rich set up a Patreon if he wins the Hub Contributors League, which is currently on course to win? Are you top, Rich?
I was after the round of Saturday's games, but I think Corf is top now.
Amazing.
So yeah, I mean, there's 10 points in it, but yeah, Corf is top of the Hub Contributors League. Off to another good start, but he doesn't care about his rank.
No, it's true, and hopefully he doesn't do anything to get himself banned from FPL as well.
Sure.
Can we get the Patreon League up now, Dave?
Yes, we can.
Sorry about the technical difficulties before.
That's all good.
So this is just something that J-Was did. So it's the ownership in our league. So it does show. I mean, Salah was 186% effective ownership in our Patreon league, and then second was Trent, and Bruno was only actually 89%. But I suppose that's because of limited captains.
Yeah, but they did well if they did captain them. Just very interesting to see, because people who are in our Patreon are obviously people who've been playing for this for a long time, who are really into FPL. It's no use looking at percentage owned, in the first game week. For those, I use top 10k a lot when I'm looking at the live FPL website, instead of the overall ownership. And it's really good that we have this so that we can have a little sneak peek of what that potentially might be, for at least the first few game weeks. So yeah, it was interesting though. Kufal's at 18%. Mahrez is a lot higher than I thought he would be as well. I thought he was going to be a bit of a punt.
Gundawan's only 11%. Maybe we didn't need that headline after all.
I told you that.
It was good to discuss mid-priced midfielders.
1 in 10 people from our own Patreon wanted to know what you were going to do with Gundawan. Did we make a decision? Do you know what you're doing? For Gundo?
Decision on what?
Gundo. Are you keeping him?
Well, we're going to get to that when we get to trap-tins.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead. Other things to note that I noticed is that Tony wasn't as owned as I thought he would be, and Barnes isn't a big differential. I was interested to see that. And, 2 of the 3 people that are here right now have Barnes. I thought I was going with a little bit of a differential, but it turns out not.
You're going to start shouting up the pod in a minute and putting the end credits on. We're not done yet, mate.
I keep forgetting we need to do teams and stuff. This is the first time I've done the podcast after a game week, so there you go.
No, I know it feels completely different doing it after a game week. Don't you worry.
Shall I show our league?
Yeah, if you could show the league, give a few people a shout out.
Yeah, I will do. And I'll fix it as well so you guys can see them. So Desmond Brady's at the top with 135 points. Ryan Quinn 130. Wow. Dathy Cavana 130 and then 122, 122, 22, 20, blah, 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 blah. But well done, 135. I'm going to go check if... I bet he used that triple captain. Must have. Yes.
Captain, 135 points. So, and yeah, if you want to join that league, it's 4U2742.
Let's just check his team really quick. Oh, decent. And he's got Son. Calvert-Lewin. Wow, well done, mate. Good job. Good job. And the Patreon league as well, Let's go see.
Yeah.
Beautifully named, I thought, this season.
Not the FPL Surgery podcast.
So I didn't know this was a thing. Did you know this, Rich? Not Richard. That if you're in, some people don't want other people to know that they're in Patreons and stuff, so they won't join the league. Did you know that? It's like a thing.
Oh, what? Like if they're playing against mates and they don't want to know that they're getting insider help?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
How crazy is that? So
Iceman's named it not the Patreon League, which is less subtle.
Yeah, he asked us. He was like, "What should we call it?" Because for people like that, and they were going to call it something, and I was like, "Yeah, not just call it not the surgery Patreon." So well done, Andrew. Gray's at the top, 113 points. See, I don't think anyone here used the triple captain. We've got 113 for there. Matthew, 112. Andreas, 112. And it goes on from. Oh, it's kind of to tie. 112 points in the top. 3 of the top 4, I think. Well done. And then
Paddy rounds it out with 111.
Yeah, there you go. Well done,
big
everyone.
Scores there. Some big scores there. So
Huge.
trap-tins.
Yeah, go for it.
we start? So should we start? Who should we start with? We starting with you, Rich?
Yeah.
Sure.
So your transfers and captains. I think there's not going to be many transfers this week.
No, so I'll be provided there's no sort of injury news or whatever. I'll be rolling in both the metric team and my team because my wife runs the metric team. We get one team each because that's the rules. So she will be rolling and captaining Salah, and I will be rolling and captaining Salah. But I am going to I'm just going to look at the info about Bruno, just out of curiosity. But I think Liverpool at home with fans. I know we don't do very well against Burnley. There's not massive scores. Salah especially hasn't done great against Burnley in the past, but at home with fans, I'm really hoping we can just turn it on. So yeah, probably Salah captain.
What kind of stuff would swing it for Bruno, or these things you don't know yet, and we'll discover in the coming days?
I mean, I need to go and look a bit more at, because I think Burnley Burnley they conceded a few big chances, and Southampton were pretty poor against Everton. But it's the home form, I think, might be a big narrative this year, especially to start with fans just getting back into stadiums. So I think I'm probably going to go with Salah and just keep an eye on home results and just see how much of an impact it looks like it's having to start with.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's not the time to start all of a sudden going against what everyone said in pre-season, which was, Salah captain game week 1 and 2, definitely. Even if Fernandes decided to score another hat-trick, I'd still say that the decision-making was sound.
They're both good picks. And you can't be annoyed if you go with the wrong one because they're both good options. And like you say, the decision-making, the rationale behind it is perfect. So
sound.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with it.
Right.
Yes, you do.
I would expect. I mean, if you're going for safety as well, I'd expect Salah to have higher captaincy this week. I mean, all the polls seem to suggest that. Obviously, the home advantage we already remembered. But yeah, so next up, I think it's you, Dave.
Yeah, you want to do my team next? Whoops, keep going. This is your team. I don't know where my team went. I think it just disappeared. But yeah, no, I'm not doing anything. I was thinking about just biting the bullet and getting Son, and then I was also thinking about biting the bullet and getting Antonio back, because obviously Ings has got just 3 game weeks, and I know Antonio seems pretty good. But then I remembered that both their ankles are pretty rubbish, and Antonio's gonna have to be playing 2 games a week soon instead of just 1. So yeah, again, I'm not going to be doing anything. I'll be captaining Salah. Very boring, very lovely. But I have an eye on a double transfer for Son, definitely, almost for certain.
For next week, you mean?
For next week, yeah. After I get my 2 free transfers.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be waiting, and I'm quite jealous. Really,
it might be Shaw that goes. You've got Gundawan, so it's easier for you to get downgrade. I could downgrade Barnes if I really wanted to, but I feel like he's gonna. Someone in the chat said, "Oh, Dave got banned from FPL, and that's why his team's not showing up." I'd be raging, but luckily it's just a screenshot, so we're all good. Yeah, once I get a double, I could downgrade Barnes, but I feel like he's got a little bit more in him. Whereas Shaw, I didn't want to start with Shaw anyway. I really didn't, and he's the only pain point in my team from like a personal having fun point of view.
I was surprised you didn't want to start with Shaw.
I know, but he wasn't in my team when I first made it. You know how you always make a little team just before you look at who owns everyone on Twitter? You just kind of go on an instinct thing. And Shaw just wasn't there for a long time. And then, more people joined and he went over 50%. And I was like, oh, I have to play safe. And that's really annoying.
He was your Bruno.
Yeah, he was my Bruno. Yeah. And look at him, 1 point already. He's already on the board.
Yeah, that's so reactionary to say that because
no, I know
Eiling scored.
That's why I laughed. No, I don't know who's going to be going yet, but yeah, Son's going to be right there, man. What about you?
Well, unlike you two boring people, I'm gonna probably I'm not gonna say I'm definitely gonna make a transfer, but
do it.
If it wasn't so early in the season, I would happily bring Webster in for Gundawan. So Webster, my bench is I've got Webster first sub at home to Watford, and then Eiling second on the bench at home to Everton. So I wouldn't actually mind playing them if needed, but I don't want to lose money on Gundawan. If his price starts dropping.
Is it
dropping? That's what I would keep an eye on.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to start thinking about Gundawan. Like, I need to keep an eye out for what Pep says. I think it looks very unlikely this early on. I might need to speak to Alan actually.
I think it's hilarious that you think he's owned high enough for his money
diagnosis.
to drop.
I mean, he could still drop. And the thing is, if he's out for a few weeks as well, he's just a dead spot on my team. And I don't want to be deliberately having an awful bench.
That's him at the top there.
I mean, there is a chance, because if I don't do it this week, I'll have to do it next week. So what was his drop at the moment?
30% or something. I'm trying to get it on the screen there.
That's quite a lot, quite a substantial drop when we're only on Monday. So there is a good chance Gundawan drops, because I think a lot of those owners might have been engaged and noticed that De Bruyne was out, and that's why they've gone for Gundawan. But anyway, so I'm going to have a little think about it. I think Rafinha and Salah were the first two that jumped to mind, but Rafinha has a little bit of risk about it. I mean, we basically talked about all the options, and I need to really narrow it down. It's only Monday. I think I'm going to do a transfer and a captain, easy peasy, Salah. I'm not keen on. I've never captained Bruno, and it's away to Southampton, and it always reminds me of that game where Man United got absolutely destroyed by Southampton, and they had to change their kit at half time because they couldn't see each other. And I know that was like 25 years ago, but my childhood memory, I remember that game. And for that reason, and not that reason alone, I'm captaining Salah. I'm going to be very, very boring. I think that home fixture as well, Anfield. I've seen people say his record's not that great against Burnley, but I only really use stats like that as confirmation bias. I wouldn't not captain someone because they've got a bad record.
That's funny. So if you were going to captain Bruno, you'd be like, oh, Salah doesn't really score against Burnley, and then that would
we're in the early kickoff as well. Never back the early kickoff as well. If you're looking for stats and confirmation bias, we're the early kickoff this week.
You know how I avoid that though? I set my captain without looking at next week's fixture times. It can become quite hard when doing a podcast, but I knew I was going to captain Salah before I realised it was the early kickoff. So that's not biasing me at all, and it just makes Saturday morning a bit more fun.
That's interesting. It's one of the things that I think you have to be like a long-term football fan to because I know that you guys probably and loads of people that I know who go to see the football games will always know what time all the games are starting. It's something that is just I didn't know who was playing first during the week.
Reading always play at 3, or generally play at 3. So it also means I can watch the Liverpool game.
Yeah, that's true. See, but like it's just something that I've never ever taken to see all this like, oh, don't back the early kickoff, like nonsense. It's nonsense. It's total nonsense.
Gandhi said it, mate.
Oh, did he? Oh, well then, yeah. Well, Gandhi's a fraud as well. It just doesn't make sense. I just don't get it.
I never know with Dave what he's going to say. So actually, a list of things Dave could have said, at least he's fraud. That's fine. That's fine. I'm not going to get like banned. But yeah, so we're Salah captains all round.
Yeah.
Boring as always.
And Gandhi's a fraud.
And that. I'm not going to say it. So feedback. We got some great feedback from Nick. So Trigger Lips he's known as. And I thought this feedback was amazing because Nick can be a little bit grumpy with some of his podcasts. So we do appreciate it, Nick. Nick said, best pure podcast I've listened to this off-season.
Lovely.
So thank you. I think that was mainly because of Stefan, but we will take it. Thank you.
He called it off-season too. That means he likes basketball, I'm sure, right? It's pre-season, but he said called it off-season, unless he's been listening to a lot of...
I think he lives in New Zealand, so maybe... I don't know what they call it down there.
Oh, yeah, rugby town.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. As usual, we've been using loads of hub stuff. We've been talking about it loads. You can sign up. There's a link in the description. It'd be awesome if you did that. And again, go and just subscribe if you haven't. There's been over 50 people in this stream for the majority of the time, which is our highest. Like we're still kind of building it up, and it's small numbers for now. But 50 is we hadn't hit that before, and now we did today. So thank you everyone for tuning in. It's been awesome. I've been really enjoying reading the chat while Richard has been talking shite, so it's been good.
Yeah, I don't like this Richard thing. I think we're going to have to make... To be honest, I knew with Rich what Rich's name was, but I might, in future, with any guest, I'm going to check what their name is and maybe get them to change it if their real name's not known.
I was going to say, you won't invite me on again.
Yeah, I know, I was going to say, you booked the guest.
It's been a good run.
You booked Rich for Gameweek 1. You thought I was going to not call you Richard?
If Rich's Twitter name changes, it's because he wants to come on the podcast. You'll start seeing Mitch FPL doing
his
metric team.
We are going to have to get you back on though, Rich, because we're going to have to see how the matrix. What did we call it? Sorry, you said it was so boring that you didn't know another name. What was it?
It's currently the using FPL points as a metric team. And if anyone's got any ideas about what to call it,
I'll have a wee thing.
Sexier, let me know.
I put it in the chat. I mean, we can
I'll rebrand it.
No wonder I couldn't remember it. Using points matrix or whatever. We got to get you back on so we can figure out how that went, and if we can use it to our advantage, that'd be great. But
good.
Thank you for coming on, man. Is there anything else you want to plug before we get going?
No, just drop me a follow at richp_FPL on Twitter. Read my stuff on the hub if you like it. If you don't like it, tell me why, and then we can have an adult conversation about why that is
on the internet,
rather than just telling me it's rubbish and not replying.
That's really nice.
You can find me on Twitter. DMs are open and all that. So yeah,
perfect.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for coming on, Rich. It was worth using a different name for an episode. Like, I genuinely enjoyed this. Genuinely enjoyed it. And
yeah, thanks, mate. It's been good. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. All right, just one last thing to say then, Rich.
Up the pod.
You're not rich.
Up the pod.
Oh, okay, there we go. Up the pod, guys. See you in a bit. Bye.
I became rich again after. I am now rich again.